and we're talking about just how to be laced tough and through life's challenges. Because if I know one thing about life is that it has quite a few challenges. Sometimes life is good and easy. That's usually not the case. There's a lot of challenges that come along with it. And so specifically this morning, we're talking about unbreakable parenting. Now, I know some of you are either no longer parents, never have been parents, or you are not yet parents. Anybody fall into that category? A few? All right, okay. And I want to just say to you, before we get into this, first of all, did you know it's Grandparents' Day? Yes! Yeah, if you're a grandparent, you know, you should be, yeah. Give it up for our grandparents. Come on. All right. You're a great grandma. Jolene is a great grandma. We have pictures. Did you guys know Jake and Lexi had their baby? You guys have that picture? We'll put a picture up there in a second, all right? So, and if you guys start oohing and eyeing, I'll know it's come up. Because you don't ever ooh and ah for me. I know there's... Hey! Why don't I get that response? Bentley Grace, look at her. She is a cutie pie, isn't she? Look at Jake. He's like, oh man, I'm a dad. All right, we are super excited for them. If you maybe send them a note, an encouraging note or something this week, jump on Facebook, that would be awesome. But this morning, I know that for a lot of you, parenting issues may not be the kind of thing for the day that you need to be talking about. But I want to say this to you. I want to hopefully help you. If you're not a parent yet, guess what? At some point, there's a likelihood you might be a parent. You are probably, at the very least, an uncle or an aunt, right? Or you will be an uncle or an aunt at some point. And so there is still a role for you to play in a child's life, even if it's just being a mentor to a kid's life in church. We've been talking about plus one living. We're a church that's committed to plus one living, right? There was a Sunday when everybody came forward and they committed to that, to like taking other people along in this journey to knowing Jesus. Helping people take their next 4G step. And so as we keep talking about that and thinking about that this entire year, I want to remind you that every single one of you has a role to play in a child's life. It may not be as significant as being a direct one-on-one parent with that child. Every one of us has a role to play. I also want to encourage you in this. You likely know some parents. And today my hope is to give some practical tips for parenting. And so I would encourage you, even right now, you can get out some paper and a pen and get ready for that. But when I give those practical advice on how to parent, it might be something that you could just write down and send a note to somebody you know who's struggling through parenting and just say, hey, I've been thinking about you. Our pastor did the sermon on parenting. He gave some helpful tips that I just wanted to pass on, let you know that I'm praying for you, right? This could be an opportunity for you to even find a plus one in your life and start investing in them. I just want today for you all to not check out just because you go, well, I don't have little kids or teenagers in my house anymore. For some of you, though, this is probably the most relevant topic I could be talking about. And you're going, I need this. I feel like I am drowning and I need somebody to just speak into my situation. Because sometimes just taking a moment to think about how we do life helps us immensely in actually doing life. So this morning, I hope that all of us will stay engaged with this. This is just my little preface to the whole deal, but I hope that we'll all stay engaged this morning. Everybody okay with that? All right. Here's the deal. Let's pray and then I'll jump into this. Father, I love you. I love you deeply. And I thank you for getting to, already today, we've experienced life change in people. And I pray that, God, you would continue that life change in us. I pray that for all of us, we would look back to the day, if we follow you, back to the day when we crossed over the finish line, the starting line, not the finish line. And we decided to really engage with you and follow you and engage you with grace. I love you, God. I pray for every person in this room who's a parent, who's struggling through what it means to be a parent, how to raise kids, how to help them become productive members of our society. God, I pray that you would give them a special sense of your grace. I pray that they would find something practical and helpful today in your word, and that, God, it would change them. I love you, Jesus. It's in your name that I pray. Amen. So, did any of you read Choose Your Own Adventure books growing up? Anybody love those kind of books? It's one of my favorite kind of books. Have you know what I'm talking about, right? They set you in a setting, you're in the Andes Mountains, and there is an indomitable snowman, and you either go up the mountain to face the indomitable snowman and fight him, or you stay at the bottom and you face the raging storm that's coming. Have you read those? Please tell me you love them. Does anybody, am I the only person? Anybody? Yeah, thank you. You are my people back there. All right. There you go. All right. Yeah, some honest people. I I love the idea of a choose your own adventure. I love those. As a kid, I remember staying up late, turning on my light, and I'd just be reading it. Do I go up the mountain or stay? You know, I read it. This morning, I want to invite you guys to do a little choose your own adventure parenting style, all right? I am going to tell you a real world situation that Jenny and I got ourselves into, and I'm going to ask you to tell me how you would have handled this situation, okay? So here's how it goes. We were on vacation this summer at Branson. How many of you love Branson? Anybody out there? All right. It's wonderful, right? They take all your money and they make you pretend like you like it, all right? So we went to Branson. They took all our money, and we swam a lot because they'd taken all our money, and so we are there, we're swimming, and we decide that we're going to take the kids to Table Rock, and we're going to go to this beach called Moonshine Beach, where I don't think there's a lot of moonshine there. It's just a literal beach where you can go swimming, right? So we go, and it's the perfect day. It's a little hot, but there aren't very many people there. Everything I've read online says that this beach can just get packed with people. It's just kind of mildly packed. So we park. Jenny has made, have you ever met my wife? She makes this wonderful, picnic that you see in the movies or something, you know? I mean, kids have, choices on the type of sandwich they want. There's apples sliced perfect. It's just, everything's perfect, you know? We get down into a picnic shelter, and we're talking up getting in. We're like, man, we're going to get into the lake. We have to eat lunch first, but we're going to get in. It's going to be fun. I'm telling the kids stories of shark attacks that have happened in the lake, you know? Because I don't want them venturing out too deep, you know? So I'm like, last week a kid lost his arm. You need to stay in the shallows. And they're like, oh, Dad, is that real? And Jenny's going, don't believe your father, you know? And this is just real world for us. And we're talking, we're laughing. And then, have you ever watched a World War II movie where the plane is flying over Japan or something, and it's the bomber plane? And everybody in Japan is walking around, they're like, hey, everybody, how's it going? And they're just living life. And what they don't know is that there is this bomb about to be dropped. You ever seen that moment in a movie? And just World War II begins and ends all in that moment, right? This is what is about to happen in our world. We don't know it. We're just eating lunch and picnic, and kids are excited about getting in the water, and all of a sudden, this bomb named Simon Porter Allen Wagner blows up. The child goes from just sweet demeanor, I like more cheese stick, to all of a sudden what? Going crazy. Have you had that kid who does that moment? Amen. And you're like, what just happened? Is he possessed or something? The kid went crazy. We could not get him to settle down. I'm like, Simon, are you okay? We eat the cheese. I don't want to eat it. I want to swim. And we're like, you can't swim until you eat. Remember how they used to tell you to wait 2 hours? I felt like the worst parent in the world. I'm like, eat your food and then you'll swim, all right? We're not waiting 2 hours. We're putting it in there and just watch out for the sharks. This is, all of a sudden, my son goes from this sweet, adorable child to, and everything is crazy. Literally, there's other people eating picnic, and they're doing the look, the judgmental, you don't have your thing together with your kid look, where they're like, these guys over here. Some of them, there's the sweet lady who's looking at us with that I totally understand and I feel for you look, There's the guy out on the pontoon boat who stops his boat because he hears Simon and looks at us. This is how big of an event is happening here. Now here's what I want to ask you. Choose your own adventure. Do you? Your child has just exploded. World War III has happened. I want you don't have to answer out loud, but I want you to answer honestly, not what you should do or should have done in that situation, what you actually would have done in that situation, okay? I'm going to give you some choices. I understand that there are a million other choices you could choose, okay? So just in your mind, I want you to honestly think, okay, when I was a parent, how would I have handled that? While I am a parent right now, how do I actually handle that? Not how should I, what's the church answer, but how do I actually handle that moment? Here's a couple choices for you, okay? A, you just decide that it's not worth the fight. You all take off down to the beach and you go swimming to diffuse the situation. Everybody looks at you and claps because you have left the picnic shelter, all right? A, you just go. You don't worry about the fight. You just go swim. You give in. B, you grab the child by the arm. You pull him away, screaming screaming and yelling, and as he's screaming and yelling, you match his screaming and yelling right back at him and tell him what you're going to do and how he's going to have to handle it when he gets back to the car. Everybody looks at you and starts taking video with their phone, all right? C, you apologize to the onlookers. You promise to buy him ice cream, you give him a phone or some device for him to play a video game on or to watch a movie, and the rest of the family continues to eat. He has been subdued, everybody has been apologized to, everything's good, you go swimming after it's all over. D, this is the one I like. You yell shark attack, and while everyone's looking at the lake, you grab your family and you run, all right? Now here's the deal, here's what I know. Because I could come up here and I could pretend as a parent that I have it all together, that I have all the answers, and I just need to be honest with you guys. I don't. I need this sermon as much as anybody else in this room. I need this sermon as much as any of your grandkids need this sermon, as much as any of your great-grandkids need this sermon. I need this sermon. Because here's what I know. Parenting is the toughest job around, right? It is, you are given huge responsibility of these children that your job is to raise them from birth to until they're gone and do your very best to help them become people who are godly, who are hard workers in our community, that are actually productive in our community. Your job is one of the most difficult jobs there is in the world. And guess what? This is what's hard about it. This is what's even harder. There are no manuals for it, right? There are no manuals for parenting where it's like, okay, child screaming in the picnic shelter, subsection 5, appendix B. You can't just read a paragraph and go, oh, that's how I deal with that. There are no job descriptions for you. The way you have to parent is going to be different than the way I have to parent because your kid's personality is different than my kid's personality. Guess how I know that? I have 4 of them, and every single one of them is different from the other one. It's a wildly difficult job. Not only is it a difficult job because of those things, you don't get paid for it. As a matter of fact, you have to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and that's just if your kid doesn't do anything bad that you're going to have to pay to replace, right? You know what I'm saying? You pay to do this job. Not only do you pay for it, but the things that you get at the end of it is usually them complaining about all the bad stuff that you did wrong. Right? I mean, that's usual. There's some kids who, but think about it. You have complaints about how your parents raised you. You said at some point, when I raise my kids, I won't do X, Y, and Z, right? This is the job. Why do any of us ever do it? I don't know. In a moment, we're going to go to Ephesians, the 6th chapter. We're going to be looking at verses 1 through 4. And what I want to tell you is that while there is not a manual written for how to parent, there isn't a manual written for, as a grandparent, how to help your kids learn to parent. There are godly guidelines. I always think of them as guardrails. You know, you're driving down the road and the road is curving and you have those guardrails that keep you on the path. There are some there's advice that God gives. There are guardrails that He puts up that help us know how to actually parent, how to raise our children. If you were a grandparent, you might look back on the way you parented and think, did I do these things when I had my kids? And if I didn't, how do I help instill these values, this biblical guidelines into my children's life now, help them to start to understand it in a way that helps them become better at parenting? If you were a teenager or younger than that even, I want to really encourage you to listen to this because I thought growing up that whether you had good kids or bad kids was just magic, right? It was just the luck of the draw. You either got a good kid or you didn't get a good kid, and whatever you got, you just raised them and sent them on their way. As I have grown as an adult, especially, I was in youth ministry for 12 years. It means I worked with teenagers for 12 years. And I had this privilege. I was kind of like Jake. I worked at the church that I had grown up at. And I had this incredible privilege of watching kids who, when they were toddlers, acted a specific way. Their parents parented a specific way. And when they were teenagers, guess how those kids acted? The exact same way they acted as toddlers. Just like 10, 100, 200 times worse or better, right? Who your child was or is as a toddler is who that child will be as a teenager. It will just be magnified. And so what I started to realize was the parents who had children who were doing a good job, those parents were on top of it, and they were doing a good job all the way in the early years when they were toddlers, all the way they were disciplined and they were hard workers, and it was the hardest job they ever undertook. And the parents who had kids who were kind of troublemakers and were problems, typically those parents were less engaged, and I started to realize it is not magic, the kind of kid you turn out with. It is a result of the effort that we put in. Does that make sense? And so, now that's not totally true. There's, to some degree, kids' personalities and those things play into it. But in some of you, this may be a very difficult thing to hear because you look at your children and you think, well, my kid's he's messed up. She's screwed up. And it may be hard. I think it is one of the hardest things for us to admit that maybe we had a part in that. This morning, we're going to open up to Ephesians chapter 6. Verses 1 through 4, and I want to read this to you, and we're going to kind of dig into it. There are two responsibilities that we're going to look at today that Paul outlines for us, and we're going to actually spend most of the time on the responsibility of the children. Everybody give me an amen. Woo! Yeah. This could be more about your kids than you for a moment, and then we're going to kind of land on what our responsibility is as parents, and then we're going to jump into being done. All right? Give me another amen. Amen. All right, here we go. Ephesians 6:1, we're going to read 1 through 3 right now. This is what Paul says to the church in Ephesus. This is the letter he's writing to them. He says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right." Now, that should totally get an amen from you, right? If you're a parent, you should be like, put that sucker over the door frame. You know what I mean? Like, we're getting a shirt that says, "Children, obey your parents, for this is right." You know, just put that bad boy on every day and be like, read the shirt. You know what I mean? Like, this is the verse that every parent should love. You should have it memorized. It should be like, your kids should eat their food, and underneath their food, you should have a little card that this is written on. So they get to the bottom, they're like, Mom, Dad, you know what I mean? Just everything. Children, obey your parents for this, and your parents in the Lord, for this is right. This is what Paul continues to say. He's actually going back to Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 16, and he quotes a passage from the Ten Commandments. He says, "Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise." What he's saying is, all the other commandments, they come, and God just gives the commandments, but there is no promise tied to them. It's just a sense of, this is something that you should do, it's the right thing to do. I think there are actually reasons that God has these commandments, but God doesn't line those out. But he does line out the reason somebody should obey this commandment, to honor your mother and father. It says this in verse 3, "so that it may go well with you, and that you may enjoy long life on the earth." Anybody's dad, my dad used to say this, he'd say this, "I brought you into the world, and I can take you out," right? Yeah, right? Anybody else? My dad was always joking when he'd say, he'd be like, "Boy, I brought you because I'd be doing something funny," and he'd think it was funny to say that. Some of you, your dads were maybe serious when they said that to you, but most of us have kind of experienced that maybe as a dad you even felt that. "I brought you into this world, I can take you out of it." There is this sense, I'm not saying this is what God's saying, but there is this sense about the parenting and child relationship that there is a piece where the responsibility of a child is to honor their parents and to obey them. There is an actual responsibility for you children. Those of you who are still under the tutelage of your parents, there is a responsibility for you to obey your parents. And Paul is just hearkening back to the Old Testament where Moses is up on a mountain and God is inscribing on stone. Can you imagine? God took the time to write this into stone. That's a big deal, right? That children are to honor their mother and father. Now, I'm not going to say a lot about this, but it does mean, parents, you need to be worthy of honor, right? You need to live your life in a way that is worthy of honor. But children are to honor their mother and father. Why? So that it may go well with them in the land. That they may live long lives. In a moment, I want to unpack this a little bit, but I want to just say real quickly that there is a responsibility for children to obey their parents. Now, here's the problem, I think, with this. Most of us in our culture today have lost this sense that children are to obey you. Because most of us, when we've seen that done, it comes down like it's it's some sort of military school where the dad usually comes in and he says, you need to obey me, and he's got a switch in his hand. You kind of got that picture in your mind. And this is how this whole event takes place, is that obedience comes at the hand of a switch, right? And that's how that is all portrayed. And so we don't have a good sense of how to have children obey us. What parents are looking for today is for children to listen to them, right? This is not the same as obedience. Would you just stop and listen to me? Most parents today are maybe looking for respect from their children. Maybe they're looking for their children to just kind of occasionally do what they say, but very few parents have an expectation that their children will actually obey them. Now, I want to say to you that I think this is the most hateful thing we could do to our children in this world, is to allow them not to obey us. Process that for a moment. If you hate your child, you will allow them to not obey you. Now, I know I may be stepping on some toes right now. I may be saying something that's hurtful. I'm telling you, I struggle with this as well, okay? But let me explain my reason. See, I think Paul points to it. He is saying, this is why he points out that this is the only commandment that has a promise in it. It's because if you allow your child to live in such a way that they don't honor you, they don't respect you, they don't obey you, guess what you were allowing that child to learn? You were allowing them to learn to have behavior that is developing a belief about the world, right? Your children are learning a belief about the world, and the belief is this, that authority in this world does not need to be respected. Authority in this world does not need to be listened to. That I do not need to care about what the authority around me says. And so, your children will grow up to work a job, and their boss will say, hey, I need you to carry that widget from over there to over here 200 times today, and to do it as fast as you can. And that kid is going to go, I don't want to. And you know what the world does with that? You're fired. I will bring in the next guy who does want to do it, right? But see, parents, when we allow our children to just get away with it, to not have to obey, guess what we are doing? We are creating a child who is not going to go well into the land. They're not going to go forward and have a life that is long and is prosperous and is taken care of. Some of you parents know this. You were diligent as you raised your children, and you've seen them prosper because of the diligence that you put in. And some of you can look back and say, there were times because of stuff that was going on in my life, we couldn't engage our children in that way, or we chose not to, or we just kind of gave up and gave in. And my children are struggling today because of the way we parented back then. Right? Now again, please don't go home and be so upset that this is all just us looking at this world and this life honestly. And I want to say this to you. This is how I think I know that it's less about the child and more about the parenting. Can I tell you a story real quick? Who doesn't love a story? Are you getting a little sleepy? Let me give you a story, all right? I have these friends, and they are foster parents, and they are so great at fostering. Our foster system is messed up in this country a lot, right? But these people are great. They love the kids, they take care of them, they bring them into a very structured environment, and they've actually adopted a few of the kids that they've fostered. They don't have other kids on their own, they just are fostering these kids. They actually, maybe some of you know that there's a little boy that Jenny and I have talked about adopting. This family is actually bringing this boy into their house and are fostering him, and they're looking at adopting him because it wasn't going to work out for our family. But it's a very cool family, very cool stuff that they do. There was this little boy that they had fostered, and he was kind of a nightmare coming into it. Have you seen those kids where you're like, oh man, I do not want to be their teacher, And this kid was kind of a nightmare. They brought him in. They created a structured environment for him. By the time he would come to, we'd see them out with him, and the kid just did great. He started to really improve and change. And while he was living at their house, it was pretty cool. His family actually was doing the hard work to get their kid back. Some families just say, whatever, just take him. But these parents were jumping through all the hoops that the government had set up for them. And they eventually got to the point where they brought their child back in the home. It was just one of those great moments. They bring him back in, and this kid leaves the foster family, but he loves the foster family so much that for some reason they set up this system where on the weekends he can still come and live with the foster family. Do you got the picture? This kid goes back to mom and dad. He's there for a few weeks, maybe a month, I don't know. And foster mom gets a call from real mom And real mom says, hey, I just wanted you to know, because he's going to be with you this weekend, we were at Walmart, and he just threw the craziest fit. I don't remember what it was over. It may have been over getting ice cream or something. Do you remember? What? A donut. He wanted a donut. They had told him no, I'm sure, because they'd sat through some parenting sermon or gone to some seminar or listened to some class where you tell your kid no and you stand up for it, you mean it, right? And so they had told him no, and they stood their ground, and he went ballistic over a donut. He started screaming and throwing himself on the floor. They eventually, at Walmart, had to call the police to get the child to settle down. Can you picture this? I mean, he's just going crazy on him. Cray-cray, as the kid would say, right? I mean, he's just going nuts. He's going nuts. They bring him over to the foster family's house for the weekend, and the foster family has some questions. They're like, did that really happen? They asked the boy, did it really happen? And he says, oh yeah, it totally happened. And they said, I don't get it. You have never even once thrown a fit for us. Why is it that you did that for your parents, but you never do it with us? Do you know what the kid said? He said, I knew with you I couldn't get away with it. Parents, that should light a fire underneath you. See, my goal this sermon, parents, is to put you back in charge of your families. I think that's how God designed it to be intentionally, was for you to be in charge of your families. For you to be the ones that make the calls and the decisions. Guess what? That kid knows that when he's with mom and dad, who's in charge? The kid. Do you know when he's with the foster family, who is in charge? The parents. Now you may be thinking, well, it's a foster family. He was only there for a little while. I think he was with that foster family for at least 6 months, maybe longer. Okay? So they have had him for a span of time enough to know whether he is the kind of kid who would live that way or not. Here's the deal. Parents, you and I parent in a way that is either going to lead to our children living a long life in this world that is good and productive and healthy, or is going to lead to them living a life that is full of pain, regrets, remorse. Maybe some of you can even look at your own life and you can start to identify and say, yeah, you can't blame your parents, okay? And there's kind of this flip side too. Once you're an adult, be an adult and take ownership for your own screw-ups, right? But there's some place where your parents have influenced how you live. And I think it all comes back to whether we require and ask for our children to obey us or not. When you allow your children to dictate the terms of your relationship, when and will they won't obey you, you put them in the driver's seat and they are completely in control. Got it? So I want to, real quickly, I'm going to give you just some, I call these the 3 C's of obedience. They are to help us kind of find a way through to helping our kids learn to obey. This is the part that I think will be good to write down. These are practical things. These are ideas that I think, if we can get a hold of them, will help us to get our children to obey in a way that is not hurtful. All right? Because what I'm not advocating, I am not advocating you get a switch and you go out. We're going to cover this in a moment because there is a responsibility to the parent. But I'm not advocating you go get a switch and just swat your kid until they obey you. Got it? Here's the first C. All right? Here it is. Clear communication. Clear communication. That there is this place where I think parents expect out of their children something that they have never communicated clearly. Let me just give you an example. Get that room clean, right? Your definition of clean may just be, could you just get the stuff off the floor, right? It may be, could you put the books back on the bookshelf? It could be, I need that thing spick and span and I need all the dust cleaned off of every single thing, right? If you don't clarify with your children, if you don't give them clear communication, it is not fair for you to come down on them and to discipline them for something you didn't clearly define. Be home at a reasonable hour. Okay, I think midnight's reasonable, right? As a child, that's how I would be home at 10 o'clock. There is a difference, isn't there? I know this isn't rocket science. I know this isn't something that... This is just really, honestly, about treating other people the way you want to be treated. Remember Jesus talking about that? I want to ask you, how many of you would ever continue for a long term work for an employer who was not clear about their expectations of what they wanted you to do? Hey, go in there and get that thing done. Right? You would quit. At some point, you would start looking for another job. But parents, we expect our our children to read our minds, and it is unfair to them. If you are going to expect them to obey you, then have the forethought to be clear about what you're communicating. And I'll tell you how you can know you're not being clear is because either your child, who tends to have a good temperament, will disobey you, and when you come down on them, they'll be like, but you didn't say that. If you didn't say it, own up to it and say, you know what, I'm really sorry. You're right. I didn't say it. I didn't really clarify to you. If you did, then walk them back through how you clarified it. I said, be home at 10 p.m., no questions asked. Right? This is where if we are not clear, we're going to talk about this in a moment, we can be overly harsh with our children. Just because we were clear and we expected them to read our minds. Oh, parents, you can't expect them to obey if you're not clear with them. The next one is this, consistency. Consistency. This consistency counts. If you say something, back it up every time, all the time. Before we were parents, this one really struck home with me because I watched these two parents. They were two different families. One of them, maybe you've seen a toddler do this, maybe you watched your great-grandkid do this to your grandkid or something, but they're watching TV or they're doing something. Our kids used to do it with the computer. I'd be typing up maybe my sermon, and they would walk over, and they knew that if they pushed the power button on the computer, it would turn it off, right? So I'd be typing a sermon, and it would turn off. These kids were doing this to this family, but with the TV. Have you seen it? That mom and dad are watching TV. The child goes up and turns the TV off. Mom and dad are sitting on the couch and they say, you turn that back on or you're going to sit in time out. They turn the TV back on with the remote. The child plays for a little bit. He comes back over and he turns the TV off again. Have you seen this before? Guess what mom and dad do? If you turn that off one more time, you're going to sit in time out. They turn it on with the remote. The child comes over. I would be at their house watching because I didn't have kids, so it was really funny to me at the time. He would look at the TV and he'd look back at them with that smile and he'd go and turn it off. And they'd be like, I said you don't turn that TV off or you're going to sit in time out. Guess what they were teaching that kid? That he didn't have to actually listen to them. Right? Because there was no follow-through. Do you know what he did learn? Was that there was a point. There was a point. Mom and dad are always consistent. They will not do anything until they blow up. And then they will be overly harsh. You ever find yourself or have found yourself blowing up at your kids? I'm going to be honest. I do that. That's something this really strikes home in me. And I have to tell you, as I think about Jesus saying, love your neighbor as you would love yourself, this strikes home at me because I would never take that kind of abuse from somebody. Would you? Would you take somebody just waiting and they're not really following through and they're asking you to do something and then they blow up at you? You would never take that. You would leave and quit that job. You would move on. But for some reason, we force our children to live in an environment where, because we are not clear and consistent, we don't say something and back it up every time, all the time, we force them to live in that environment. Do you know how difficult that would be? What's interesting is I watched those parents, and then I had some other friends who, they had pretty sweet children, and most of the time their kids were good, but there was this point where we had all gone out to eat. We actually went to McDonald's because they had kids, and we thought, oh, they can play in the playhouse, and they just have fun, and we'll talk. Well, my buddy's son started to kind of disobey, and he was doing some stuff that he shouldn't do, and my friend, this is a different set of parents, but my friend said, if you do this, we're going to go sit out in the car until everybody's done, and then we'll go home, and you won't get to stay here. We'll take your food out, and we'll sit in the car. My friend, now what you have to know is that was a pretty difficult situation for him too as a parent, because we had some of our best friends from out of town who we hadn't seen for years coming. This is why we're all eating together. So he was literally not just saying, you're going to be disciplined, but I'm removing myself from something that I enjoy, right? And so we're sitting at McDonald's, his son immediately does the same thing again, just like the other kid did with the TV, right? Same type of scenario, but this is what my friend did. Some of you totally identify with this. He picked his child up. He said, we're going to the car. His child threw a big fit. He said, I'm really sorry you chose to do this. And he walked them out to the car very calmly. They sat in the car. They ate their lunch. He turned on the air conditioner and they sat there until we all were done. Do you see the difference? that child grew up knowing that when his dad said something, he meant it. And his dad didn't have to use a switch to prove it. He just right away, immediately asked for obedience from his son. And when he didn't do it, he came in and expected it. Some of us, a lot of you, live, if you're parenting, you live in this place where your children know exactly how far they can push you, and they will push you to that edge. What I'm advocating is that if you ask them to do something, you're consistent in it immediately. This means, for us, it was so hard. Peter was the one who would turn off the TV, and I remember, I was laying down watching a show, Peter comes and turns off the TV, which, by the way, parents, I think is a sign of your kid wanting to play with you, right? They want to have a relationship with you, not with you on the TV. And so Peter turns off the TV, and I said, Peter, if you do that again, you're going to have to sit in timeout. And I remember being like, oh man, that means I have to get off the couch if he does it again. Peter walked up, turned the TV off, and I got my lazy rear off the couch. And I have been trying, Jenny and I have been trying our very best since those early days to get our lazy rears off the couch and discipline our children, because guess what? We love them. And someday they're going to work at a job where somebody's going to say, take those 200 widgets and move them from over there to over there. If they haven't learned that kind of discipline in life, I have treated them unfairly as a parent. Get it? Here's the last one. Consequences. It's the last one. Consequences for both good and not so good behavior. I don't think I really had even heard the word. I probably had, but I didn't understand it, so I was like 15 or 16, the word consequences. And I really learned it watching my youth pastor parent his daughter. He had just had a child, and she kind of was growing up, and I started to watch him parent her, and he would do this thing. Jenny and I actually used this in our parenting. He would, even at the age of like 2, he would say to his daughter, do you want to choose this or choose that? And he didn't come down and force her to do something. He would show her the consequences of her action. If you obey me in this, if you eat your food, then we're going to get to have a great time tonight, be a family. If you don't eat your food, the consequence is you're going to sit in your chair until you eat it, and then you're going to bed. Right? He was not forcing a rule upon her. He was giving her a choice that she could choose. I think parents of teenagers have got to learn to do this. You've got to let your children start learning to choose the consequence they're going to deal with. If you want to stay out late, that's fine, but here's the repercussions. You lose the right to drive our car. So if you do that, this is what's going to happen. If you want to stay, if you want to come home when we've asked you to, and to obey that rule, and to obey us, and to honor your father and mother, guess what? You get this wonderful reward of getting to drive our car. How great is that? Do you see how you are helping your child to learn to live a long, prosperous life? This is you treating them the way you want to be treated. Yeah? Isn't it funny how as parents we get trapped in it? Believe me, I know it's so easy. You can't sit down, you feel like you can't explain every single thing to them. You start saying, because I said so. You would never let somebody say, because I said so to you, would you? You'd be like, no, Jack, tell me why you said so. Guess what? If it is a good rule, if it is something that is worth obeying, you will have a reason behind it, won't you? Because when you're out too late, you get tired, you're no good at school the next day, you're going to want to sleep in and not go to church, and guess what? Honoring God and having a commitment to Him matters so much for this family. Right? There's reasons behind our rules. If there's not, ditch the rule. Got it? There is something that needs to happen of us giving consequences. Right now, for us in our kids' age, we do this. We'll say, hey, you guys pick up the toy room. And they'll say, but I don't want it. And we'll say, hey, that's okay. You can either pick up the toy room and tomorrow you'll get to play with toys, or I'll pick it up for you. And now they know when Dad says, I'll pick it up for you, it means, and I will take all of your toys and you can earn them back from me. One good behavior at a time, right? So I have literally taken trash bags of toys from our children, and they have had to earn them back from us. Because guess what? That's how the world works. Yes? You see how you just ask them to choose the consequence. It doesn't make you the bad guy. You don't have to get all up in arms. You don't have to get mad. You just are pointing out that life is full of good consequences. We call them rewards. And life is full of bad consequences. We usually just call them consequences. Right? This matters. Now I want to say this. This is kind of the final thing. In Ephesians chapter 6:4, Paul says this, and I think this is important. This is vital in this conversation about having your children obey. And I spent so much time on the responsibility of the children because I think as parents in our culture, we're not taught that. We're not taught to actually ask our children to obey. You actually feel like the bad guy when you're doing that. We would have family members that I think it was Piper, would pull Jenny's hair constantly. Do you ever had a kid that would do that? We would kind of flick her hand. We wouldn't do it hard. It was just like that. Just enough for her to know that wasn't okay. And we had family members get upset with us. Why are you doing that? Well, because we don't want her to learn that it's okay to pull people's hair. Right? You want her pulling your hair? Right? It's funny that people were upset with us about us trying to have our children learn to obey and be good, productive kids in society. But that is where our society is at. Would you say amen to that? Yeah. Listen, I bet some of you grandparents are going, praise God, preach it, Kent, right? Because you want to see some of these kids turn out to be godly, great children. Listen to this, parents. This is the last thing, and this is probably the most important thing for you to listen to this whole bunch of all this stuff. Paul says this to you, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Don't exasperate your children. You know, I know that's a big Bible word, but in our family, how I think of exasperate, it's like this. It's watching out for the moments in parenting. Does anybody else's kids do that? Go, whenever you ask them to do something? Man, this is the moment when they throw the fit. We call it the caveman noise, literally in our family. I'll be like, don't give me the caveman noise, boy. You know, and just all the other kids pick up, mom, dad, and they're walking around. I'm like, you're not a caveman. Stop it and talk to me if you have a problem, right? This is the moment where as a parent, you need to watch yourself. Now see, I know my kids, if they've been watching TV, if they've been playing video games, if they've even been at school, they tend to be a little grumpier, a little meaner, a little tougher, and they will sometimes have this response, and it is unjustified. But every time they have this response, I watch carefully for what I'm actually asking them to do. Because sometimes, you know what, I'm asking my kids to let the dog outside because it needs to go to the bathroom, and you know why? Because I have a lazy rear. And I don't want to get off the couch, and they're little, and I think they should just do it for me. And I'm making them my slave. Go get me a drink, will you? And you know what my kids doing? They're getting exasperated. They're going, Mom and Dad they just use me. They don't care about me. You see? I'm going to write a blog post about this. I'll post it. It'll be on Facebook about some of the things that bring the moment into life. But I want you guys to just think about it. Here's kind of a list. Are you listening to your children? I know so many parents who will not listen to their kids. I'm not saying that they're right, but what happened to just stopping and listening to them and caring about them? Again, love your neighbor. What about your children? I mean, they might as well be one of your neighbors, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Whatever, wouldn't you want somebody to just listen to you? Are you treating them like your personal slave? Are you leaving them alone in emotionally broken and vulnerable states? This is a big one. If your child is in the room and they're crying that sob of loneliness, not the I didn't get my way cry, but the lonely sob, why not go and sit by them? Why not go and just stop worrying about the obedience for a moment and say, are you doing all right? I remember the first time I realized this, Peter was 2, and I was exasperating the child. Like 2 years old. You got to clean up that toilet, pick up that toilet, pick up that toilet. I was new in parenting. And I remember I left the room and Peter was sobbing, and I just came back and God just hit me over the face like a brick, and he said, you are exasperating that child. Go in there and sit beside him and see if he's okay. And I went in and I didn't say anything about all the toys he needed to pick up. I said, Peter, are you doing okay? And he looked up at me with these sad eyes. I just can't make you guys happy, Daddy. 2 years old. Good gracious, folks. That should break your heart. I sat there and I put my arm around him and I said, son, I'm so sorry. You make me so happy. We just need to pick up our toys. That's all I'm asking. I'm sorry that I wasn't thinking about treating you like you deserve. And I actually had to apologize to a 2-year-old. When was the last time you apologized to your 12-year-old, your 20-year-old? I try to do that all the time when I'm wrong. Because I would want somebody to treat me that way. Wouldn't you? Are you investing in a relationship with your child? So many parents think that proximity to their child equals a relationship to their child. It does not. Just because you were in the same household, you were eating around the same table, does not mean you were in a relationship with that child. Do you know one of the saddest things from my youth ministry years that I found was almost every boy, when I talked to them, boys who were really hurting, who were messed up, do you know what it came down to for most of them? I just wish my dad loved me. Whew. Man, that better get you. I just wish my dad would spend time with me without yelling at me. I just wish my dad would just come to my event and just cheer for me. Man, I made a promise to God and myself that day. I would do my darndest to be the kind of dad my kid someday goes, my dad really loved me. I'm telling you, men, you and I have this responsibility to actually invest in a relationship, not invest in rules and proximity with our children. And it is difficult. I feel the burden because I want my kids to be good. I want them to be successful. I found myself when I was coaching T-ball telling Peter that he needed to run faster to the base, and then the kid who actually couldn't run fast to the base, I'd be going, "Good job, buddy, give me 5. What kind of dad is that? Peter feels like he's a failure when he's running as hard as he can and giving his best. You get what I'm saying? Dads, it is difficult. We put so much pressure on our kids. Would you with me? Moms are better at this. Would you with me invest in your children? If they're older, take them out for a drive, right? If maybe just go out. Let me teach you how to drive. Let's work on it. Take them out on the 4-wheeler. Go shooting. Go fishing with them. Don't talk about how they're doing in school and their grades. Talk about who they are. What's been getting to you lately? You get this? Invest in a relationship. So many of us are exasperating our children and we don't even know it. I started with that story about Simon, and some of you came up with an answer of how you really would have handled it, right? I want to share with you in closing just kind of how I would have handled it, how we actually did handle it. Simon it was World War III, he's blowing up, he's going crazy, and we took him, and I said to Simon, Simon, buddy, you need to eat your lunch. We're not going to go swimming until you eat. And we're not going down there until you eat this food. And he just was going crazy, and he was hitting me. I mean, the boy, he was 1.5 at the time. He's just going nuts, and he won't stop, and I can't get him to stop. And he's just going nuts. And I finally say, Simon, if you don't stop this, I'm going to have to take you to the car. And if you can't stop at the car, then we're going to all go home. We're not going to even go swimming. And Simon is just going nuts. I can't get him to stop. I very calmly, and this is not because of me, because Kent's good, but I very calmly picked him up. I held him close to me. And I walked him back to the car, and we sat there with Simon screaming. I thought maybe the air conditioning would help, because it was kind of hot. It just was kind of feeling miserable. So I thought blowing the air conditioning on the boy would get him to calm down and cool down and just calm. He just wouldn't stop. As a matter of fact, this family pulled up next to us, and they're getting out of the car, and I can see the mom, because I'm looking in the rearview mirror. She's like unpacking and looking up at my car, and she's like, and then the mom goes up and she pops the hood to her car, and she pretends to check the oil, and she's like looking at me, and I'm thinking, oh man, she thinks I'm abusing this kid. And the whole time, I'm just holding him, and he's weeping, and he's crying, and he's fighting. We took him home. I texted Jenny, the whole family came up. The kids didn't get to go swimming that day at the beach. We took him home, and for the next hour, Jenny laid in bed, holding Simon to her chest as hard as she could, just saying, "It's okay, baby, just go to sleep." Finally, after an hour, he exhausted himself to the point where he dropped, and he went to sleep. I think about my own life with God. There have been so many times when I am fighting him, and I'm fighting, and I'm fighting, and what bums me out, that the scripture talks about God as a father, and what bums me out is that so many of you can identify with a father who wasn't good in your life, with a father who didn't care about you, only cared about the rules, didn't care about a relationship with you. What bums me out is that when that happens, you miss who God really is. You see, we didn't handle that situation with Simon because we're so good and we're great parents and we've got it all together. We handled it like that because in those moments, I think about how God handles me. And you know what? There have been times in my life where I've been fighting him. I've been pushing and hitting on his chest and saying, "Let go of me, get away from me." And all he's saying is, "I just want you to come home. I just want you to come home with me." And this morning, I don't just want to return parents to being the leaders of their family. I hope that some of you will return Jesus to being the leader of your parenting. You know what I'm saying? That you will stop fighting him, stop hitting him in the chest, and you will just lay your head down and let him be God. Let him be the Lord. Let him transform you. This life is too short for us to wait another Sunday. This life is too short for us to wait another moment. Did you just say yes to Jesus? Do you just say, I want you to be the leader. I want to stop fighting against you, and because I know what life is like when I fight against you. And instead, I want to start experiencing what life is like when I walk with you, because it is powerful. It will change everything about you. It will change the way you parent. It will change the way you are in relationships. It will make you unbreakable. It will. This morning, I want to invite you. We're going to sing a song. I'm going to have you guys stand. And I want to invite you that if this morning you've been fighting against God and you realize that this whole time He's really been there holding you, but you couldn't see it because you were just in this tantrum of life. You were fighting, doing everything your own way, rebelling, and you just keep hitting your head against wall after wall after wall, and you need new life, new hope. I want to invite you to come forward. To come forward and talk to me. We'll pray. We'll talk about what your next steps could be. Can you guys stand with us and sing this song?